train speaking examiners and also to monitor them. And I'm also a speaking examiner myself. So the first thing that I wanted to ask you is, have you, let me just see if I can get one second. Just bear with me for a second. Have you ever, sorry, are you currently teaching preparation classes? So if you could just write it in the chat. I can get it to open. Let me see here. Yes, I got it here. So are you currently teaching exam preparation classes? So goodness, is someone's going to have an individual student, yes? Yes, Natalia said that she's having exam prep classes. Very good. Okay, so just if you could write it in the chat as well, what do you see as the main difference between teaching an exam preparation class and teaching a normal general English class? Continue, and then as I see things coming up in the chat, we're going to be talking about them. Someone here says motivation. Yes, that's true. Motivation is a big element. We're going to be talking a little bit about motivation also throughout this session. Okay, good. So now another question is, have you ever taken an official language exam yourself? So I know that it was also in my case. I was also an English student at some point, and I took Cambridge exams. And I know that's the case for many English teachers whose first language isn't English. So someone says yes, someone has taken an official language exam. I think that as whether it's English or a different language. Like I have many colleagues from the UK who have taken a Spanish exam here in Spain. At least you can see how students feel both when they're preparing for the exam and also on the day of exam, because it's very different when you do exam preparation where there is no pressure as to, for example, when you have to take the actual exam and you can feel the pressure a little bit more. Someone here said motivation. Motivation is a very big element of when we're preparing for these exams, whether it is because we need to the exam in order to achieve something to do perhaps with work, or whether it's because you just want it for personal reasons, right? So yeah, very good. So something important when for exams is day one is because that's when your students are the most confused. They might have loads of questions to do with their experience when it comes to preparing exams. Teachers, we can help them out by making them feel a bit more comfortable, letting them know, we're going to be seeing this a little bit as well more in depth in a second, but letting them know that it's not a sprint, that it's more of a marathon. Something else that we need to bear in mind is all the different types of courses might have when preparing our learners for official examinations. For example, we might have a course where the aim of the course is both to raise our students' level of English and also to train them for the exam. Or we might have courses as well where we're only preparing our learners for the exam and they're expected to already have the level. So we might have those two types of courses. But it's very important because that's probably what for the exam. Probably when our students are the most question might have, for example, is how do you
Bernardo,
how do I actually go about? Yes,
I'm terribly sorry. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah,
I guess there is kind of a problem with your connection. Is it
there?
Okay? Yeah. Is it okay if you stop your video?
Yes.
Maybe it will make a little bit.
That's very strange because I have a. Okay, I'll stop my video.
Okay, and now just share your screen without your video if possible. Let's see if it works.
Okay. Okay.
Right.
Okay, that's very strange because my internet has been working okay all day. So anyway,
sorry about that.
Anyway, so And my apologies if it's my connection. I'm very sorry. But anyway, some of the questions that our students might have when they come to the classroom on day one is, for example, how do you go about preparing for the exam? What do I have to do? Do I practice every day? Is it like going to the gym? That's kind of how I imagine it. Is it like going to the gym that you have to do some maybe twice a week or every day, right? How long will it take me as well to do this, right? How does it work? How does the exam work? How many do I have to go? Is it all done in one day? Is it done over 2 days? Like, what are the details of the exam? This might be a question they might have, especially if they haven't signed up for the exam by the time they sign up for the course, which is in many schools, it's the case. What are all the different sections of the exam? Well, of course, that would depend on the exam that they're taking, but if they're taking a Cambridge exam, how many parts does it have? And how do I go about kind of distributing the time when it comes to preparing for the different sections? Is it too much work? Is it too much a commitment for me as a student to take this on? How much time is it going to take of my life, right? And that's something that's very important. Because obviously, if you make the commitment to prepare for an exam, there's going to be a big investment, both in terms of money, because these exams and the preparation costs money, and also in terms of it. And a huge question, am I going to pass? And I think it doesn't matter how good your level of English is, but if you go and tackle one of these exams, you're always going to be wondering whether you're going to pass or not. So I think as teachers, we need to help our students build their confidence, so they feel that they're going to, of course, do the best they can when it comes to tackling all the different parts of the exam. And now we'll be looking at this again in a few minutes, but the Practice and Pass series, because it's scaffolded, it really helps students kind of build their confidence. Okay. What's B1? And that's a question I've been asked by my students day one when they've gone to class. Sometimes, I mean, for us, it's very obvious. We know all the Common European Framework levels, but it might not be that obvious for people who are outside of the ELT industry. So for normal people, they might not know what A2, B1, B2, C1, C2 is. So yes, so in this particular case, some students might have that particular question. So they might not know, for example, that B1 is intermediate. That's more, or that's happened to me more, especially when students are required to have a particular to be able to achieve something. So for example, here in Spain, many teachers are required to have a C1 in order to be able to teach in schools. So sometimes they're not exactly sure what C1 is compared to B2. So they might not know that, for example, CAE is for C1 and first certificate is for B2 and PET is for B1. Now it's a little bit more obvious because the names of the exams have changed, but that's something that's come up in my classes. So, and more importantly, the whole experience might be a little bit over questions on day one, and yeah, so they might not have that confidence that that they will need in order to be able to approach this big task, which is taking this exam. Yeah. So again, as I mentioned, we need to let our students know that this is more of a marathon rather than a sprint, right? So it's not something that they're like being able to do the tasks well in these exams is not something that they're going to be able to do overnight. It's important to see this as a long-term project, and I think it's better for them if they're well prepared than if they go after only having taken just a little bit of practice. Yeah. So just a question for you guys, if you could write it in the chat. First of all, can you hear me well? Is it better now that I've turned off my camera?
Yeah, a lot better,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay, excellent, thank you. So what other kinds of difficulties do you encounter when preparing students for official examinations, apart from the ones that I've mentioned already? So one of the things that I was thinking of when I was preparing the session, and this is something that I have seen especially when I was director of studies in an academy here in Spain, is that a lot of teachers and a lot of students expect this as well, which is sometimes the reason why teachers do it, and is that sometimes we start using past papers really early when we're preparing students for exams. I've seen teachers do it, and I think I've done it myself at some point as well in the past, even from day one, right? So start with a past paper to see where your students are. So why do I put this as a kind of difficulty when preparing students for official exams? Because if you give students past papers really early on when they're preparing for tests, they're not very likely to do very well. This would be the same, for example, if you were learning how to drive and they asked you to drive in the highway, perhaps on day one, right? So obviously you're not going to feel very good about it. You're not going to feel very confident, and it's likely that you're not going to do a very good job, and that will affect your confidence long term. So that's another difficulty that I've noticed when preparing students for official exams. Another one is perhaps someone, again, mentioned motivation. They might need to take the exam because they're being asked to by an external, right? So for example, for work, or if it's IELTS, perhaps for migration purposes, or to go to university. So perhaps this is not, they're not doing this because they love English. They're doing it because they have an administrative need, let's say, yeah. Someone wrote here, sticking to the formats. Yep, sticking to the formats of the exam. Something very funny as well, now that you mentioned sticking to the formats, is following instructions. It's really hard sometimes to get learners to follow instructions to the letter, especially when it comes to the writing part and the speaking part. So that's something that perhaps people are not very used to doing. Anything else? Okay. So I'd like to tell you how the Practice and Pass series kind of tackles these things that I've mentioned before. Yeah. So the first thing is that this series of books has a very clear structure, is divided in a way that is very easy to follow. Yeah. So each section is divided. I will show you in a second as well. Each unit or each part or each unit is a part of a test, right? And each part of a test is divided into prepare, practice, and pass. So we wanted to kind of create this kind of scaffolding. So so learners would be first introduced to the type of task that they have to do. So they would get to review key vocabulary and grammar. And then little by little, they would start doing tasks that would resemble more the actual task that they have to do in the exam. So by the time they actually attempt to do the task, they have the confidence in order to do it well. There is one course book per level. So we have course books for A2, B1, B2, and C1. The C1 book is new. It's actually just come out. It's straightforward exam preparation. So in this particular series of books, even though we do touch on grammar and vocabulary, the main focus of the book is to prepare students for the exam. Yeah. But not like a past paper book where you only just do past papers. This is a book where you, as I mentioned before, where little by little you build up your skills in order to be able to perform the tasks well. You have mock exams at the end. It's not linear. And by this, I mean that because of the way of the structure of the book, you don't have to follow it in a linear way. So for example, if you want to cover one lesson listening and the next speaking, you can jump back and different sections of the book as you see fit. Now you get free teacher's notes with the answer keys, and I'm going to show you in a second how to download them. And as I mentioned before, we have books available for A2, B1, B2, and also for C1. And we also have a digital version available, and I'm going to be showing you in a second how it works. Okay, so in order to download the teacher's notes, you just go to the Delta Publishing website, deltapublishing.co.uk, and then you go to the exam section, the exam book section, and then you go into the teacher's notes, and then you can just register and then download all the teacher's notes with the answer keys. So let me show you a little bit the structure of the book. Yeah. So every book starts with what to expect on the day of the exam. And as I mentioned before, many students come with many questions on the first day. And a lot of these questions are covered in this part of the book. So here they can see what to expect on the actual day of the exam. There are some frequently asked questions, such as, for example, what happens if you fail the exam, or what will you be tested on, that kind of thing. Then you cover a little bit on the structure of the exam. Yes, so you talk about all the different parts, how many papers there are, how many parts each paper has, etc. So the main focus of this part is for students to know exactly what they're getting into, right? Then, as I mentioned, each of the books or each of the units is divided into prepare, practice, pass, and perfect. So in each part of the test, the units, students are asked about how they feel in each particular section. So so they can actually assess their own knowledge. So, for example, if we talk about speaking part 1, for example, you can say, right now I feel about taking the B1 preliminary exam, or X part. And then once you've done the prepare section, how do you feel before going into the practice section? How do you feel after you've done the pass section? And now, how do you feel after the perfect section? And what do you need to focus on? So each of these different sections is asking you about how you feel and what you need to work on. And also in some sections, you're asked about pieces of advice. Yeah. Okay, so this is kind of what the prepare section looks like. So here you will see exercises on what you have to do in the paper. Yeah, you have grammar and vocabulary exercises as well that are very relevant and very common in each of the different sections of the test. And then you have exercises that will help students get familiarized with all the different tasks. So if you, for example, this is something I was talking about before, in many cases, we come in with past papers, which is the actual task, and they're quite difficult. In this particular case, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get our students to get to the actual level of the task by first getting them to practice grammar and vocabulary that is essential in order for them to do the task. And again, exercises that will help them approach the task more confidently. In the practice section, you have exam preparation activities. So you have tasks that are a little bit more similar to the actual tasks that they're going to get in the actual exam, right? And then you also have, well, you focus on what you need to do in order to ace the task, and you get a summary of what you have to do in every part of every paper. You also have, and then you have the pass section where you have the actual exercises that you have to do, that you have from the exam. Now, each of these have some key exam tips that are very useful when you actually take the actual exam, right? And then you have the perfect section, which is kind of a summary of all the papers. So, for example, here we're looking at the listening one, and it tells you, for example, how many papers there are in the listening part, how long does it last. Then their students are asked to write what they have to do in each of the different parts of the paper. Of this particular paper, and then they're given advice, and they're given the chance for them to give their own piece of advice. Yeah. So this is how it looks. This is actually very good. If you like, this works a little bit like the can-do statements. So you can write, for example, what you have to do in each of the sections of the test, and then tick if you feel that you have practiced it enough, and if you feel that you can do it properly. So again, this is helping students build their confidence before they approach each of the different parts of the exam. Then at the end, you have a lot of useful phrases that or pieces of language that will come in handy whenever they're doing all the different tasks. So for example, here we're looking at useful phrases for reading and writing parts 6 and 7 for preliminary. So here you have, for example, phrases to start an email like, hi Marco, hello, how are things, etc. Say why you're writing, asking questions. You have here, for example, useful phrases for speaking, for the speaking parts 1 and 2. So things to introduce yourself, asking for clarification, getting extra time, describing a photograph or a picture, making suggestions. So here basically you have loads of really useful pieces of language that you can apply when you're kind of trying all the different parts of the test. You also have this section which is called keywords, and here you have kind of mind maps with topics which are very common in the exam, and then words that are very frequent. So a lot of these pieces of vocabulary come up throughout all the different sections of the exam. So this is to help students learn new vocabulary. This is also a kind of suggestion for students to record vocabulary. So this is a really good kind of visual way for students to record vocab. And then at the end you have a practice test, which is more like a mock exam. But again, as I mentioned before, you wouldn't really approach this particular task until you've covered all of the book, until you feel that your students are confident with all the different parts of the exam. Now, all the listenings are very accessible, both for the teachers and for the students, using the Delta Augmented app. I don't know if you guys have used it before, but it's very simple. All you have to do is download the app, open the app, then you point the app at the section of the book that you want to get the listening for, and there you have all the listening files available. Yeah, so you just play it from there. I don't think you can hear my audio, actually. Can you hear my audio?
No, unfortunately not.
But it's okay. It's just a random listening file. But as I mentioned before, from here it's really easy to get all the it's really easy to access all the audio files from the Delta Augmented app. And it's great as well, because that means that students get to have all the listening files, and they get to practice after they've done the exercises. So it's really good, and it's all handy in your mobile phone. So that's great. Now we have digital versions available of all of these books as well, which makes it very easy as well for us to use this material, especially if well, nowadays that we're doing more online classes, and that kind of hybrid classes have come to stay. So this is a very useful way to be able to use this material online. One of the great things about using this I'll show you in a second. Actually, I'll show you now. I'll show you what it looks like. So we're using the Blink platform. I don't know if you've used this platform before, but basically what we have is all of the exercises of the book are available online. So here you have, for example, all the different sections of the book, and then you have it divided into all the different steps. So you have step 1, 2, and 3, prepare, practice, and pass. So if you open one section, you have all the exercises there with the useful language boxes, and then you can attempt the exercises a few times. And one of the great things about these particular digital materials is the fact that it resembles very much the computer-based exams. So if your learners are interested in taking the computer-based version of the tests, this material is very similar. So by the time they actually approach the exam, they'll be familiarized with kind of what it looks like. Yeah. So another great thing about this is that it's an actual LMS system. It's a learning management system, which means that teachers can track their student progress. That means that if your students do exercises and they're in your class, then you as a teacher can see how many times they've attempted each exercise. You can see what answers they've input as well. Also, there are some exercises where students don't get immediate answers, for example, writing. So in those cases, students do the writing and it gets sent to the teacher for the teacher to mark and then give feedback to the students. So in that case, it's a very complete system. Excellent, because students can track their own progress. And also, as I mentioned before, if they do this, if they use this material, they'll be familiarized with how the computer-based exams work, because most of the exercises, if not all of the exercises actually, are very similar to the format of what they would have to do in the platform that Cambridge uses for their computer-based tests. Yeah, so that's kind of in a nutshell how we can use practice and pass in order to help our students prepare for, in this case, B1. All of the examples that I used today come from the B1 book. I don't know if you guys have any questions or...
Yeah, we do have some time, so for questions, if there are any. All right, so the presentation is quite informative. Thank you, Bernardo. I guess
Thank you
there are
very much.
no questions at the moment. I should say that Delta Augmented app is really user-friendly. There should be no problem using it. And also the book is interesting. It's quite concise, but still, so it gives a lot of useful tips, right, for the teacher. So how to teach our students, so to get ready for the exam, and how to know, and also to know the strategies for dealing with this or that exam tasks, right? So digital versions are available. So dear colleagues, please feel free to contact us and to ask for some demo access. We would be happy so to help you here. All right. Bernardo, thank you very much. Yeah, the presentation is great. So the books are great. And you are one of the authors, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm one of the authors for the A2 and B1 books.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. All the best.
Yeah, hope to see you at some of our other conferences and events.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, have a nice week. See you sometime.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Dear colleagues, this is it for today. And we hope that you enjoyed the materials, the presenters, and so you didn't waste your time, all right? So hope to see you all tomorrow. And again, so before Bernardo started his, just a second,